Hey everyone, this is Barrett at C4 Cyber Club from Cypress College. In this video today, we're going to go over Cisco Networking Academy's lab for writing basic scripts in Windows and Linux. The objectives here, we will write basic scripts in different scripting languages to help understand how each language handles automating tasks. Now this is going to be a batch file that's done in the command prompt. It will be a PowerShell script, and then we'll also look at bash shell scripting within a Linux setup. So essentially what this is doing is it's showing how we can automate certain tasks. And in this scenario, we're just getting very basic information about the computer. So before I launch Notepad like the lab requests to actually write out the script, I thought I'd kind of go over what some of these lines mean and take this line by line so that you can get a better understanding of what this is automating. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open the command prompt. So you can search for command, pull up the command prompt. So let's just look at one line here. For right now, I'm gonna skip this echo offline, and we'll come back to it later, and you'll see why once we do. But let's look at the second line here, and let's just type this out in the command prompt, just this one line. So we'll do echo computer name is, and then we'll do the %, computer name, end it with another %. So when you hit enter, you get back computer name is ITEv7. So first off, this echo command, what it's doing is just saying echo back to the command window whatever I type next. So this could actually just be hello. And you see it echoes back hello. But looking at this line, it's echoing out computer name is. So you see that here. Now where did it know to pull this ITEv7? Well, so in this script, whenever you see these % signs and the name in between, this is saying this is a variable, and more specifically it's what's called an environment variable, and it's system specific. So this is something that even if I just did echo computer name, it's just going to give you the computer name. And another way to find this, if you wanted to go the long way rather than automating this, is to go to settings, and then you can go to system, and you can go all the way down here to about, and you'll see here device name ITEv7. So this is a good example of why scripting is so important, because if you're an administrator and you need to get this information quickly, maybe just very efficiently, you could write scripts like this to just where you're going to see in once we get to it, you just run one line and then you get all this detailed information. So that's what the variables do here. And you'll see there's this other one here, processor identifier. Let's just go ahead and echo that out and see what that returns to us. Okay, and that's pretty much telling us, okay, Intel 64, this is a 64-bit processor. And now, just as another example of where you could find these environment variables, this is a bit more advanced and not related to the lab itself, but still part of the general deep dive here. You could actually edit the system and environment variables. And if we go to here, you'll see here there's these system variables. So here you go. Here's the processor identifier. And so it's already configured to send back, Intel 64 family, 6 model, 45 stepping. So I hope that helps to understand what some of these bits of this script are doing. They're pulling that global system specific specifications of the system. So with that in mind. Let's go ahead and launch Notepad. And so what we're going to want to do is enter in all of this text, and you can go ahead and pause the video here to enter it in on your own. I'm going to enter it in myself here, and then I'll jump to once it's complete. Okay, so I've got this all typed out here. Now this, when it comes to scripting, you'll definitely want to make sure that you didn't make any mistakes. You could technically make mistakes in the echo lines, because what this is doing is just echoing out what you type, and it's not necessarily a command. But when you get to the lines like the WMIC and netsh, these are executing commands. So you definitely want to make sure your syntax is correct. Make sure there's no spaces, for example, between these commas here. Very important. So with that done, in Notepad, it defaults to saving as a text file. So what we're going to want to do is come to File, Save As, and we don't want to save this as a text file. You'll notice in the lab, we want to save this as info.bat. And what that is, it's a batch file, which is a type of scripting file. So you want to change the Save As type. You'll notice here it was defaults to text. You want to change that to all files. And it's wanting us to save this to C drive users and then ITE user. So we're going to save it in there. I'm going to save it as info.bat, and I'll hit save. And you notice up top here it says info. It doesn't display the .bat, but as long as you typed it in when you did save as, we're good. I'm going to go ahead and just minimize this for now. And we're going to go back to the command prompt. It's an easy way to get to the command prompt. Just search for CMD, and you can hit enter. Then it will pop right back up. Okay, and now you'll see that the directory that we default to is our users folder here, the ITE user. So I'm going to do dir to list the directory, all the files and folders. And you'll see here we have the info.bat that we just created. So let's go ahead and run that. And easy enough, all you do is just type in info.bat. Great, so that has run. So let's break this down. Let me scroll back up here. Okay, so this is our script that we wrote. And let me make this font a little bit bigger as well. There we go. Okay, so once again, still ignoring this echo off. I promise I'll come back to it. The second line here, echo computer name is, and then the variable computer name. So we could trace that back all the way to this first line. So we see it echoed computer name is, and then it pulled the variable computer name, which it knew to be ITE10. If you go to the next line, echo Windows version is, and now this VER is another case where it's a global configuration variable, and it knew to list the exact version of Windows here. Then you echo total memory is. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Echo CPU is, and this is one that we looked at on its own individually in the command shell. So we get the CPU is Intel 64. Then echo total memory is. And then, so this is where we get to the WMIC command. This is something that we didn't go over earlier. And if you want more information, the lab details it very well. It's basically just it's a command line utility to retrieve more information about your system. So in this case, it's saying WMIC runs the command. I want information on the computer system and get specifically the total physical memory. So that's what's listed here. And we're seeing about 8 gigs worth if you tally that up. Now the next line, we echo the disks that are installed in their free space. You see that line right here. And now we have another WMIC command. We're saying we want information on the logical disk, get the size, get the free space, and caption. So caption is the name of the volume, so that it looks like there's 4 drives on this system. Here's the free space column, and here's the total size of each of those volumes. And then the last section, we have echo all the computer name variable IP addresses. So you see all the ITE7 addresses, IP addresses, sorry. And then it runs this netsh command. It says, show me the interface IP, and it's going to find only the IP addresses. So you'll see here it displays 3 IP addresses. Now, a couple more things that I want to show you here. What if we ran that netsh interface IP show address? What if we ran it without the find string command? Let's see what happens. Okay, so that actually showed us a lot more than just these 3 IP addresses. So this is a common command line technique where, okay, we have this command here, and then when you use the pipe command, this is sending all of this output, but instead of outputting on the screen, it's actually piping it into this command find string. And you'll see here on the lab too, it notes how find string is used for searching for a text string in files. So what we're searching for is IP address. So what it's going to do, it's going to search all of this and pull only the lines that say IP address. And that's why we get a nice, clean, tidy report on that. So the reason why I show all of this is because it's kind of should give you context as to why people automate, why we write scripts. So finally, I think the only thing I needed to get to is the echo off. So let me go back to the notepad, and I think the best way to show this is by example. So I'm actually going to remove the echo off. I'm going to resave this, and let's come back here. Let's go ahead and clear the screen. I'm going to run that again. Okay, so you see now it's a little bit more messier, and you notice how we have all these C prompts. So what the echo off does, it literally turns echo off as the script runs. So you see here, this is our first command. We ran the script, but then what it's doing is it's sending these echo commands on a new prompt every time. And even the @ sign tells the script, don't even show me the original command echo off. You know, just run the script and give me the details I want. So if I go back here and let's go ahead and add the echo off back, and I'm going to resave. Let's go ahead and clear screen, run info.bat again. And now you see we're back to a nice, clean, and tidy output. So great, good job. This is your first experience of a script. Very good. So I think that is, yeah. So that's it for the first step. I believe I probably answered most of the questions here to help you fill this out. If not, a lot of them are up here in the lab text. Yeah, great. So let's go ahead and move on. So now we're gonna get into PowerShell scripting. So this is definitely something more for advanced users, but you're gonna find that it's very similar. It's very similar, just slightly different commands. Okay, so let's go ahead and search for PowerShell ISE. And very important, before you click on it, actually right-click, and we're going to run this as administrator. And we go ahead and say yes, we allow this app to make changes. Okay, so let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. I can just go ahead and zoom in a little bit. We'll try that. Okay, and it would like us to go to the users folder. So let's go to users ITE user. We are there, hit dir. You see that info.bat that we created earlier, but just heads up, we will not be working with the batch file within PowerShell. So to allow the script to run, we want to type set execution policy, remote signed. Whoops. Syntax is also important here. It's case sensitive, so you want to make sure you get that correct. And we will go ahead and say yes to this. Okay, and we're just going to go to File, select New to create a new script. So you see we have our PowerShell down here, and then this is where we'll be writing the script. So at this point, I know this is a lot of new commands and a little bit more complicated, but just go ahead and get this typed out inside here, and I'll meet you back here in a second. Okay, great. There we go. Have everything typed out. One thing I want to note that I noticed on this lab, I don't know if this is going to be for everybody, but this last, if it says TABOW for format, that's actually supposed to be format table. So just a quick heads up. I don't know if that was a mistake on my end or if that's global in this document. Okay, so before we go over what all this means, let's go ahead and save this. To save, we just go up to File, Save As, and we want to make sure that once again we are in our user folder. So go to C drive, Users, ITE User, and you'll notice that this is saving as a .ps1 file. So we're going to save this as info.ps1. Go ahead and hit Save. And now down here immediately, if we do dir to get the directory, we see that next to our batch file, we now have a info.ps1. So let's go ahead and run this. To run within PowerShell, we want to do a period backslash info.ps1. And there you go. And I would hope, oh, looks like we have a problem here. So we could take a look at that. That's a good little experiment. So if you come across something like this, red usually means bad. So this is giving us some kind of an error. So let's see where at the total memory is. So if I look up at my script, that's here. So odds are I got something wrong in this line here. So let's take a look. Okay, so I figured it out here. If you had a similar error, I just noticed that the formatting on the PDF, it had a, it seemed like there was a space before this dash and computer name. So what we want to do, we actually just want to bring this back next to that dash there, make sure we save it, save script. Now let's go ahead and rerun that. I'm just going to press the up arrow, run info.ps1 again. And there we go. No red this time. Okay, so this is essentially doing the exact same thing as the previous script that we did. But the lines are just a little bit different. So if we, let me go ahead and bring this up a little bit. So if we look here, write output computer name is, write output is very similar to the echo command. Get content env, which you could probably recognize it as an environment variable. So get the environment variable computer name. So instead of having the, the percent signs, it's slightly different command here. So, oops, screen's going a little funky. Go ahead and bring that back up. So that is essentially giving us just these two lines here computer name is ITE. That is equivalent to these two lines here. And you'll see write output again, like echo, Windows version is, and the Microsoft Windows 10 Pro relates to the get WMI object class Windows 32 operating system. So that's telling us what operating system this is running. The CPU is, we see that here. And then we're getting the processor information. And once again, we're using because this probably outputs a lot more information, we're sending that to find a string and only the name of it. And we're getting 2 here because this computer that we're on is actually running 2 processors or 2 cores. Next we come to memory. So total memory this is the write output, or similar to the last one, the echo. And tell you what, it's a long line just to output 8, which is the total physical memory on this computer. And next we have the hard disks. So it's writing outputs, the disks that are installed in their free space. And then we're getting, same as last time, we called logical disk, and we're getting all of the information on the 4 different volumes. And then finally, we are getting details on the IP addresses, and we see the same as before with a little bit more detail on this one. So that's pretty much it. I know I kind of went a little bit faster on that one, but because they're so similar, and I believe in the next part of the exercise, you get to compare, which I kind of went over a couple lines, like echo relates to write output, and echo CPU is going to be write output CPU is, and the equivalent of running the WMIC command and getting the total physical memory relates to this line here. So you're running, essentially you are running the WMI command still, but the way you do it is slightly different within PowerShell. So yeah, that's PowerShell. So that's going to move us into the last part of the lab, which is creating a bash script in Linux. So let me go ahead and close out of here. And so we're actually going to start a VM instance of Ubuntu using the Hyper-V. Okay, so let's load up the ITEv7. Yeah, we'll just select continue. Okay, so now we are in our virtual instance of Ubuntu. So much like we did at the beginning of the lab, we're pretty much just going to open a text editor and insert the bash script that we're going to be working with. First thing we want to do, right click on the desktop here, go to desktop preferences, and then we're going to go to advanced and select this top check mark, show menus provided by window managers when desktop is clicked. We'll go ahead and hit close. And now let's go ahead and right click again, excuse me, and then we'll go to accessories and then text editor. Okay. So now that we have this up, like I said, this is almost exactly like Notepad. Let's go ahead and type this in. While you do, kind of think about how this relates to the other two that we've been working with, because you'll find that it's going to pretty much output very similar details about the system. Okay, great. So we got that typed out. Now you'll notice we have some things that look familiar, some things that are slightly different. So right off the bat, you see echo's back. Echo is pretty global, can be used in both Windows command prompt and Linux. you see this host name in all caps. I hope that you could probably guess this is also a variable. So in Linux, instead of the percentage sign, like in Windows command prompt, Linux uses the $, and only one of them. So it doesn't need to be at the end. But generally, this is calling a variable. Some of these other commands we'll go over them as we run the script. But for right now, let's go ahead and get this file saved. And so where do we want to save this? We're going to save this to the ITE user home folder. And so on the Windows command, we saved it as a .bat or batch file. In Linux, we're going to save this as a .sh or a shell script. So let's go ahead and info.sh, hit enter, and you'll see up top here that has saved properly. So now we can leave this open if you wish in the background. Let's right click on the desktop again, and now let's launch the terminal. And this is pretty much the same as we did in the Windows command prompt. So, whoops. Okay, so now also important, when we created this script, it's not instantly executable. So let's do ls for to list the files in the directory, and you see here we have the info.sh. I'm going to do ls-l for a long listing, and what this is doing is it's showing us this info here relates to the read, write, and execute permissions for both users, groups, and what we see here is that we have read and write permissions, but we don't have the X. So we need the X to be able to execute this file. So following along in a lab, if you just do chmod 755, and it's okay that you don't fully understand what this number means. Essentially, though, what it is doing is it's upgrading. The 7 refers to this first section right here. Or I'm sorry, it refers to where it says R, and the 5 here would be W, and the 5 going here would give us the execute command, the permission, sorry. Okay, so that ran, and let me go ahead and do ls-l again, and now you see that's turned green, which means that that is a executable script. And you see that we now have the executable permission added. So now all we have to do to run this is --. Remember on, this is where it can get confusing because each OS has slightly different ways. So on PowerShell, it was a \. However, on Linux, it's a // info.sh. And there you go. And it actually looks like we have some issues here. So what did I do wrong this time? Okay. I stopped there for a second. It took me a moment to figure out what happened. So this area is oddly formatted in some places. I hadn't noticed it the first time I ran through this, but odds are you may have be getting the same thing I did here. Double check your script and that it looks like this output here. So what we need to do at this pretty name, we have to put this down here. And then, okay, I think that was the main problem. It's possible we might want that on that line. And then host name there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and resave this. I'm gonna clear the screen and I'm going to rerun info.sh. There we go, much better. Sorry about that, but it's kind of nice when these issues happen on the fly during a recording, because not only do you realize that not everybody gets it right the first time, but it's very easy to usually figure out the error. And this happens so often in coding and scripting. So it's pretty normal. Great, so what are we looking at here? So once again, going line by line, this, you may think, but this is not related to the echo off command from the first script that we looked at. So this is a typical in Linux scripts where it's called a shebang in scripting terms. And it's basically telling this script, hey, we're going to be using the bash shell to run this script. And what you're looking at right here, this is the bash shell. So much like the other ones, I think you could figure this out. We're echoing computer name is. We're pulling the variable host name. So this is ITEv7, which remember we launched this VM and the name of it was ITEv7. We're echoing out the operating system is. Pretty name is something that so grep is an example. It's related to the find string function, or I'm sorry, command, I should say, that we used previously, where we're saying cat etc os release, and this would be like a file. So let me do it manually. And cat is short for concatenate. It's just a command that we can display a file onto the shell window. So if I just do that, you see it gives all of this output. And all we're looking for is this pretty name, which is basically another way of saying, just give me a nice clean output of the version. So if I press up and do grep, or like I said, this relates to the quote unquote find string command, and we grep for pretty name, it returns just that and actually highlights it in this case. Okay, so moving back up here, in fact, just so I don't confuse you, let's just go ahead and run the script again. Okay, so where were we? So we grepped for pretty name, so echo CPU is, and we are running lscpu, which is much like, that is a kind of a variable where we can get CPU information, and all we're doing is we're grepping for the model name. So that's why you see only this line here. And then you have echo total memory is. Once again, similar to this, we're viewing the details of mem info, and we're grepping or finding only the mem total, which is this line here. Then we're echoing out the line, the disks that are installed, etc., right here. We're running another built-in Linux command, df, or disk free is that, and the -h is what is giving us all of these details here. And then finally, we're echoing all of the variable hostname IP address. We see that line here, and we see on this system we only have the one IP address. And that is it. So we have successfully gone over 3 different types of scripts using just the standard Windows batch file in the command prompt. We did the PS1 PowerShell script, and finally we did the Linux bash shell script, and they all do the same thing essentially. But you'll see how, and this is kind of relates to programming languages too. If you look at Python and C++ and even JavaScript, once you start to understand the fundamental terminology of scripting and programming, the languages are different, but it's much like human language. You know, we speak different languages, but often the you can find similarities and you could start to learn the basics and the fundamentals of other languages. So that concludes this lab, writing basic scripts in Windows and Linux. Thanks a lot for watching. Yeah, see you next time.